Welcome to another episode of In My Own Words. I'm your host, Cory Thames, and with me I have in the studio Michael Scott Jr. Mike, thanks for joining.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Corey.
So, before we get started, this man right here holds several titles for me. He's a big brother, mentor, someone that hold me accountable when I need to be held accountable, but one of the realest brothers I know, and honestly has become one of my best friends. So I'm really excited about today's episode to be able to talk about a whole bunch of things with you.
I appreciate you having me here, man. And you hold those titles with me as well, my friend.
I appreciate you, brother.
Yes, sir.
So first question is, you are a born and raised West Side guy. What has the West Side of Chicago meant to you, and how has it shaped you into who you've become?
The West Side means everything to me. As you can see, I'm proudly
I see you repping.
wearing my West Side shirt. It has made me who I am. It has allowed me to not only be in the boardroom, but if I need to be in the back room with Pookie and Ray Ray, I can do that as well. But my father and my mother always told my sister and I, it is not where you live, it's how you live, right? And so they raised both of us to be, I think, productive citizens and give back and serve our communities. And so I just love and am proud of the West Side.
So before we get started into the meat of the interview, I always like to go through some icebreaker questions.
All right.
So you just tell me the first answer that comes to your mind. Biggie or Tupac?
Biggie, all day.
Okay. Jay-Z or Nas?
It's tricky. Jay-Z, but Nas lyrically.
Okay. Minister Society or New Jack City?
Menace to Society. Old Dog is from Chicago.
Who's a leader you look up to and why?
I would say Benjamin E. Mays. He was the sixth president of Morehouse College, and I credit him with being the father of the civil rights movement. He mentored Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Julian Bond, and Maynard Jackson, first mayor of Atlanta.
Okay. And last question is, what's the best piece of advice anybody ever gave you?
Best piece of advice is, if you find a job you love, you never have to work another day in your life.
Okay, I like that. I gotta use that one.
Yes, indeed.
So now we get into the meat of the interview, and we've talked about it before, but the premise of the show is to really have a vehicle for folks to be able to share their stories. And I feel like you have such an inspiring story, really rooted in public service. So when I thought about doing this show, you were one of the first people that I wanted to interview.
I appreciate it. I wouldn't characterize it as that. I'm not as interested as you think, but I take it.
So I like to start from the beginning with your upbringing. Now, your dad, Michael Scott Sr., was a powerhouse in the city of Chicago. He was a close advisor and confidant to former Mayor Daley. He was president of the Chicago Board of Education, a board that you now sit on as well.
Indeed.
And so how has your dad's legacy shaped who you are? How did he instill the values in you, particularly around public service, that kind of inspired you to pursue a career? Mm-hmm. And I guess I got to ask, do you think he would be surprised that you ended up on the city council?
Man, that's a lot. So I'm taking it in parts.
Okay.
My father, honestly, is why I serve. To watch somebody get up every day, leave the house, go and do the people's business, and come home with a smile on his face, made me want to do that. Even as I learned when I grew up, even when he didn't have a job, he would get up, put on a suit, and walk out of the house to make sure that I understood as a man, you need to get up and provide for your family. And even if you're looking for a job, you can't sit around looking for a job on the couch. Mm-hmm. Now, kind of what he instilled in me, I'll give you a little story. Seventh grade, at that time, he was working in the mayor's office of special events, which is now DCASE, and it was Taste of Chicago time. And in Taste of Chicago, he was down there 12-hour days, and I get home at 4 o'clock. He's at home, and I'm like, this is strange. Get off the bus, and I learned somebody had broken into our house. Mm-hmm. stole all of the bikes, the basketballs, skateboards, anything that a child would want to have in the summer. And it was close to time for us to get out of school, and I'm in tears. He's consoling me as we walk to the front of our building, and he's like, these are material things we can get. We can get more of those at any time. And when we get to the front of our building, the guys who had broken in, our neighbor had saw him and said, "Hey, Mr. Scott, those are the guys across the street." And anybody who knows my father knows he's a man of action. He sprung into action and started running after those guys. And when he get close enough to him where they can hear him, he says, "If you got something, you better use it." So the guys actually had something, had a 22 in the waistband, pulled it out, and without looking, shot 3 times. One of them hit my father in the stomach. Now,
Wow.
I tell that story not because of that part, but because of this end part. When he got out of the hospital, he did the Taste Chicago, went off without a hitch. But when we were at home, I'm saying to him, like, why do we stay in a community where people will rob and steal and commit bodily harm to us? And he said to me, and something that was a catalyst for me to serve was, hey, if we are to leave this community, we are just as bad as those robbers, because we would be robbing our community of everything they poured into us. And we need to be pouring that back into our community. And lastly, I don't think he would be surprised. He didn't want me to serve, though. He wanted me to go out and make money, and I wish I had listened to him. He wanted me to go out and make money before I served. But he would always instill in my sister and I that, there is no more noble a cause than service other than being a man of the cloth.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or woman, in my sister's case.
Yeah. Yeah, and your whole family is rooted in it. Your sister's now
My
the
sister's
alderman
now
of
the alderwoman. My mother was a ward superintendent for 15, 20 years, and then went and served at CTA until she passed. Of course, my father served as the president of the board twice. He was the president of the board at the Chicago Park District. He served on RTA, CHA, and he was just an all-around good West Side kind of guy.
So speaking about service, a lot of people don't know that you actually spent 15 years working in government before you became an alderman, mostly with the Chicago Park District, where you ended up being an area manager. Talk to us a little bit about your journey and how you got there, and what were some of your biggest successes.
Well, I would say more than 15 years, because I served not just at the Park District, but I was at the Public Building Commission, worked at CPS for a stint. So I have about 25, 26 years of service under my belt. Although I'm only 30, I started when I was 4. I've been serving pretty much my entire life. At the Park District, that is, in my opinion, the best job I ever had. That's where I really loved, where I learned to love what I did, and it didn't really seem like work. And what I think is the best legacy, or the thing that I give you 2 things that I did there that I think were very impactful. The first is, if I go to a park now on the west side of Chicago, there is somebody there that I mentored, hired, and helped matriculate through the park district system, and now is either an area manager or a park supervisor or instructor, and teaching some of the things I taught to them, to young people in the city of Chicago, specifically on the west side of Chicago, which I think is really important. The other thing that I did when I was there was start the West Side Music Festival, which was a free outdoor concert that served in its 8 years probably 100,000 Chicagoans with free music. We've had the likes of Belle Biv DeVoe, 112, Brownstone. Anybody that was in my era, I know you're a little bit too young for that, but anybody was in my era who grew up, the SWVs of the world, we've had just about everybody grace that stage, and it is amazing to be able to see people come together in a nonviolent, productive, social way, and just make the West Side shine. And that's something that I've been very proud of, and something that I will cherish as long as I continue to work and serve.
Well, as somebody that has been a frequent concert goer of the West Side Music Festival, it is honestly one of the best concerts of the summer, definitely.
Well, maybe one day we'll bring it back. COVID did a number on us in terms of just putting the whole thing together. And I have to give a lot of credit to Natasha Scott, my wife, who has been the driving force as it relates to the West Side Music Festival the last 6 years that we did it. You know, maybe she'll want to do it again, and I can assist her. But it is something that I'm very proud of, and something that I know a lot of West Side and just Chicagoans in general enjoyed.
Yeah, shout out to Natasha too.
Shout out to Natasha.
Hi, I'm Tawana Streeter, host of DIY DEI. Tune in on Mondays at 7:30 p.m. as I discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace.
Let's fast forward to 2015. Well, really 2014 when you really think about it. And you are now presented with the opportunity to potentially run for alderman of the 24th Ward. And I'm sure asking yourself all the questions, right? Can I do this? Who'll support me? Can I raise the money? Talk to us a little bit about what made you to ultimately decide to run. And what the thought process was in determining whether it was the right time, whether it was the moment to do so. I'd love to hear about that.
So what's funny is I had thought about running before. I thought that I was ready in 2009. Unfortunately, both of my parents passed in 2009. And I was kind of turned off by politics, just kind of, you know, if you know the story of my father's demise, and I don't want to get into that, but if you research, you know, somebody who did so much work in the city of Chicago for so long, I didn't like how he was portrayed ultimately at the end of his demise, right? And so that turned me off to government altogether. But as I continue to hear his voice in my head saying stuff like, if you're not part of the problem, you're part of. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. I'm hearing that echo in my head, and you know, you're ready when people come and ask you to serve. You can't say to yourself, "Hey, this is what I want to do." People should be telling you that we like what you're doing and we want you to serve us, right? Because that's ultimately what you're doing. You're doing the work of the people, and you know, they have to want you to do that. And as people begin to ask me to contemplate that run, and as my family started to mature, and I was set in what I needed to do, and my wife, who has been a rock as it relates to my family, making sure that we had everything that we need, and would be there so I can get out there and do that, then I thought that I was ready. Now, I thought that I can raise a ton of money, right? You know, being Michael Scott Jr. and, you know, looking like my father, hopefully being able to serve like my father, I would think that money would start pouring in. But if somebody tells you they're going to give you $5, count on $1, right? If somebody doesn't give you a commitment of a dollar amount, then they're probably not going to give you any money. And so was struggling to raise money, just like everybody struggles to raise money. And, you know, I got to give a shout out to Alderman Jason Irvin, who is politically my big brother, similar to how I am with you. You know, he kind of mentored me in the process of how to run a campaign correctly, and what his organization did, and how you do this correctly, and how you get out and knock on doors, and, you know, put me in contact with a fundraiser who helped me raise money and helped me craft my campaign in a way that resembled myself and my family values. And so I got to give a shout out to him and his wife, because they really did help me. And as that happened, you know, things just, you know, it was like a hill going up when I was attempting to raise money and that kind of thing. When I got to the top and Jason was there, Natasha and my family was in place, then the rest was like smooth sailing on down. And so it is something that I cherish, and I loved every day of service to the people in the 24th Ward, and I'm very happy that I was able to assist in helping put somebody there who I think would really do the business of the people, and that is Alderwoman Monique Scott.
Yeah. How did you stay motivated during that time period, right? We all know folks that have run for office, wanted to run for office, and especially in our communities, to your point, fundraising is oftentimes really hard to do. And you spoke about it. If somebody says they'll give you $5, you might get one.
Right.
How do you stay motivated on the campaign trail when you have this desire to serve your community, but we all know that money is a big barrier in some cases?
Well, ultimately, it is the desire to serve, and the desire to do the work, and the desire to make your community better. That's all I ever wanted to do, and that's why I felt comfortable stepping away when I did, because I think I made my community better. But in terms of motivation, you got to really, I said earlier, if you find a job that you love, then you don't have to work a day in your life. And to me, it wasn't work. It was doing something that I was born to do, that my father had instilled in me, something that I, proud to be able to carry on his legacy, proud to be able to serve a community that had given so much to me and my family. If it were not for the people in North Lawndale and being able to champion and lift my father up, then I wouldn't be where I am, because I was able to stand on his shoulders. He was able to stand on the people's shoulders before him. And so it was an honor for me to be able to canvass and knock on people's doors and to learn issues in that community, and to be able to identify challenges and opportunities that I could help and solve with the people of North Lawndale and the people of the 24th Ward. So ultimately, it wasn't, I didn't need much motivation. It was something that I was lucky enough to do. It was the ability to serve, again, people who had given so much to me and my family.
Okay. One of the things and I'm not just saying this because you are my big brother and friend, is that you are an alderman that's really brought development and projects and are really changing the ward for the better. You and I had a chance to sit down at a Soleil restaurant a couple of weeks ago, a phenomenal spot that everybody should check out.
Indeed.
But talk about some of your major accomplishments during your time as alderman.
So, the one thing that I will not be able to see is the fruits of my labor. Well, I'll see them, but it won't be under my watch. You talked about Soleil. There's also a soul food kitchen that opened, kind of days after I left, that I had worked on for years. There is the corner of Costner and Roosevelt that had been a dumping ground. If you remember the old Silver Shovel site back in the 1980s, where people would come and dump their waste in our community, we now have a black developer with black lawyers and folks who in real estate that are African American, and a black construction company that is going to build an industrial complex for 300 jobs for people in the neighborhood. There is something called 1,000 homes that we started working on, and they just started breaking ground on those 1,000 homes. There is so much that North Lawndale is going to see because of the work that we started and the work that my sister is going to finish as alderwoman. It just makes me smile on the inside, to see. I've been here my entire life, and never in 40 years was able to go to a restaurant in my community, sit down, feel safe, and eat good food. You usually go to a Sharks or Popeyes or McDonald's, and although those are good for its time, people want to be able to go in their neighborhood and do the things that you can do in Lincoln Park and Rogers Park and in Wicker Park, and I want that to happen in Douglas Park.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure I noted that, because attracting development, moving the needle forward, especially in Black communities, is always harder than some of the other neighborhoods.
It's very difficult. But the one thing that I think North Lawndale has an advantage of, and this is what I tried to do, if you go back in the history books and you look at North Lawndale and 24th Ward, in the 20s, 30s, 40s, it was the most highly populated place in the city of Chicago. Mm-hmm. At its high point, it had 125,000 residents, right? And the reason it did is because of the great location, right? You're 7 minutes from downtown. You're in between 290 and 55. And you're right by the park. You got all these beautiful gray stones. And so what it would happen is when people would come from the south, or they would come from overseas, they would come to North Lawndale because it had all these jobs. And in another episode, we can go and talk about the history of North Lawndale. But what I tried to capitalize on, the things that made it great then, its location, its proximity to downtown, being in between 290 and 55, and all of those things. Being able to sell that to people, that's not a hard sell. Mm-hmm. And now, because the land is cheap, we were able to do quite a bit of things in my 7 years as alderperson.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to make sure you got your flowers for that.
I appreciate that.
As somebody that knows how hard you work and the projects that are here and are coming, I think that
Indeed.
Folks, I wanted to make sure you had a vehicle to be able to share that.
One other thing, because if they see it, they'd be mad at me. The Wheel Group, the LED lights that you see in and around the city of Chicago, they built a 100,000-foot building that hires all from the community, ex-offenders. This is a Black-owned business. Steve Davis and his family does a great job, and so I want to give them their flowers as well, because we built that while I was there, and they employ about 100 people from North Lawndale.
Awesome. So after 7 years, you decided to chart a new path.
Let's not say 7 years, right? Because you got to count all of those others. So 25 years of total service.
After 25 years of service, you decided to take on a new opportunity as Director of Industry and Community Relations for CineSpace Film Studios. What made you, decide to make the move? Mm-hmm. And then talk a little bit about your role and the impact that you hope to have through CineSpace.
Well, I always thought that I would do 2 terms, right? Mm-hmm. And so I got to 7.5 years, and this opportunity presented itself, and I thought that I would bow out and be able to help put somebody in place that I think would be able to carry on the things that we did. And so I got to that 7.5 years, and I didn't want to have anarchy mm-hmm. in the community when that happened, even though it is still anarchy because there are 9 people running. But, I wanted to give whoever my predecessor would be, I wanted to give them the ability to get a head start and to learn everything that's going on and to be able to put their imprint and their fingerprint on it. So that's one. Secondly, CineSpace is the largest independent film studio in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. We have 55 film stages. And if you've ever watched Chicago Med, Fire PD, you've ever seen Shameless, you've ever seen Southside, The Chi, a new series coming out called Saturdays, The Bear, which is a critically acclaimed series. They're all filmed right here on the west side of Chicago, right here in my backyard. And to be able to go over there and to bring community inside of that gate so people can kind of see what goes on, I think mm-hmm. was a big attraction to me. The program that I had called Cine Cares is an opportunity where we take young folks and everybody who has been in this program. We've had about 75 participants over 5 years, have all been Black and brown. And we've gotten 40 of them their union cards, which I think is a life-changing deal, right? So you're able to be in a union in an industry that does not look like you and I, right? There aren't many folks of color in there, so I'm able to, one person at a time, diversify this industry. But more importantly, I'm able to give them life-changing skills that they can use, not just here in Chicago, but if they wanted to go to LA, if they wanted to go to New York. And, another thing that I am attempting to do is connect the Chicago Public Schools to this program so that, people in and around the community, if they have a pipeline to these jobs, one thing I never knew, even as an older person, is there is something for anybody to do in this industry, right? If you're a carpenter, if you're an electrician, if you're good with math and you want to be an accountant, if you like to dress or you want to be fashion, you can do wardrobe, you can do set design, you can do just about anything that you want to do.
Yeah, the opportunities are endless.
They are endless, right? And it's not a bad pay, right? And you get to see your work on television every week, right? It is. That's what attracted me. I knew it was my time. I knew I had served. I hope that I have served the community well. And it was an opportunity for me to do something else that I've always wanted to do and something that I love. So I'm still not working.
One of the things that has really resonated with me, especially this year, is kind of being reflective and thinking back on some of the defining moments that we have in our lives. I know I've had defining moments where I think to myself, if I didn't go through this, then I wouldn't be where I am. Do you have any, as you think back over the course of your life and career, do you have one or more defining moments that kind of shaped you into who you are and ultimately guided you down this pathway?
Oh, I have plenty. I have plenty. So, I talked about a couple. My father being shot, I think, propelled me into service. And when both of my parents passed in 2009, it really forced me to grow up. It really forced me to become a man. Now, my father had always told me, "Hey, I'm raising you to be a man. I'm doing all these things so that you know what will happen or what you need to do if I'm no longer here." And God dog it if that wasn't the case, right? It was really important, and I'm really glad that he showed me, and I was able to watch him be a man and him do all of these things. So I'm able to now teach that to my children. But it really forced me to grow up. I don't think that I would have been ready to run for alderman if I had done it in 2009 when people were asking me. I had to grow. I had to mature. I had to do some of these things that he taught me on my own. And another defining moment, and it unfortunately a lot of this centers around death, right? When I was recently out of school, my first cousin's name is Dion Jenkins. We went to a club, and I had started working, so we weren't able to hang out with each other as much as we used to, and he was kind of sweating me to go, and I was like, I don't really want to go. My birthday's the 24th of December. He was like, come on, go out for your birthday. So we went out on the 25th, the night of Christmas, and he lost his life to we can get into this story another day, but he lost his life. Somebody at the club opened fire on him, right? And for me, I was thinking about leaving Chicago. I was thinking about going back to Atlanta because I had so much fun at Morehouse College in Atlanta. But when that happened, it really gave me a sense of family and connectivity to my family, and knowing that, things don't last forever, right? And really started to dig in and to become more community centric and more family centric. And, I think those three things right there kind of shaped who I am and why I kind of do what I do. You're not always given another day.
And last question is, who is Michael Scott Jr. in your own words?
So Michael Scott Jr. is a husband, a father, a son, a servant, and a man of God. And if I can be remembered by any or all of those, then it has been a life well lived.
Well, Mike, it has been an honor to interview you, and an even bigger honor to know you and call you my friend and brother.
I appreciate
you.
Thank
you for joining In My Own Words.
Thanks for having me, brother.
All righty.